What's the harm in a little white lie, right? It's just a harmless fib to smooth things over, to avoid trouble, to protect someone's feelings, or even to buy a bit more freedom. But when small lies grow unchecked, they can spiral into something far more dangerous than ever intended. One such lie, born over a century ago, became one of the most destructive in history, setting off a tragic chain of events that cost countless lives. The year was 1914, and World War I had just begun. The military needed watches and equipment that glowed in the dark, so factories across the US and Europe began churning out luminous dials using radium, a substance discovered 2 decades earlier by French physicists Marie and Pierre Curie. Though some scientific circles knew of radium's dangers, Marie herself suffered radiation burns. Others praised its supposed healing properties. It was touted as a cure for everything from cancer to arthritis and even constipation. With its newfound fame, the world saw radium not just as a tool of science, but as a miracle substance. To meet military demand, factories hired women, whose delicate hands were deemed perfect for painting tiny numbers on watch faces. These workers, seen as lucky to have such a glamorous job, became known as the Ghost Girls because by the end of their shifts, their skin and clothes glowed eerily in the dark. The allure didn't end there. The women were encouraged to use a technique called lip pointing, shaping the bristles of their paintbrushes with their mouths after each stroke to achieve the fine details needed. When they asked if radium was safe, they were reassured it was not only harmless but beneficial, giving them an ethereal beauty. But that so-called harmless glow harbored a deadly secret. In 1922, one of the dial painters, Molly Maggie, had to quit due to unexplained health problems. A simple toothache turned into a nightmare. One extraction led to another, with each new wound sprouting painful, festering ulcers. Her jaw became so brittle that it fractured with the slightest touch, and as her condition worsened, Molly's body began to betray her, the radium eating away at her bones from the inside out. She died at just 24, with no clear diagnosis. Her death was attributed to syphilis, a convenient cover-up that cast doubt on her suffering. Molly wasn't the only one. More women began falling gravely ill, suffering from fractured limbs, relentless pain, and disintegration of their bones. Yet their employer, the United States Radium Corporation, denied responsibility, even when their own commissioned research confirmed the link between radium and the women's illnesses. Instead of coming clean, the company buried the evidence, paid for contradictory studies, and lied to government regulators and the public. As the death toll mounted, the fight for justice began. The surviving dial painters faced an uphill battle, struggling to prove the connection between their work and the devastation to their bodies. It wasn't until a male worker succumbed to radium poisoning that experts finally took notice. Dr. Harrison Martlin's breakthrough research demonstrated that radium, once ingested, lodged itself in the bones, emitting continuous radiation that bored through tissue and caused irreparable damage. The so-called harmless amounts had catastrophic consequences, condemning those exposed to a slow and agonizing death. Despite this damning evidence, the radium industry launched a campaign to discredit the findings. The women's fight wasn't just about their own survival anymore. It was about saving countless others from sharing their fate. Yet, lawyers turned them down, unwilling to challenge a powerful corporation. Some didn't believe the women's claims, while others thought it impossible to overcome the existing laws that favored industry giants. In 1927, a young lawyer named Raymond Barry took a chance on 5 dying women who had nothing left to lose. The courtroom drama unfolded with the corporation deploying delay tactics, hoping the women would succumb before a verdict could be reached. Although the women settled, the case captured the nation's attention, forcing the world to acknowledge the deadly consequences of unchecked industrial greed. Newspapers exposed the horrors the women endured, while radium companies continued their attempts to deny the truth, even stealing the remains of their workers to hide the evidence of their crimes. the battle wasn't over. Driven by a commitment to justice, the Radium girls pressed on, even as they weakened by the day. Their voices could not be silenced, and the tide began to shift. Testimonies from dying women like Catherine Wolfe, who spoke from her deathbed, forced the world to confront the brutal reality of radium poisoning. The outcome of the Radium Girls case marked a historic moment. For the first time, an employer was held accountable for the health and safety of its workers. It laid the groundwork for the establishment of workplace safety regulations, shaping future protections for countless employees worldwide. But this victory came at an unforgivable cost. The original group of dial painters all died from their exposure, with many others following. What began as a small lie, one that radium was safe, ballooned into a catastrophe, all because those in power refused to admit the truth. Their story stands as a haunting reminder of what happens when greed and deceit are allowed to triumph over human life. The Radium Girls' legacy endures, not only in the laws that protect workers today, but in the courage they showed in the face of overwhelming odds. It was a fight for truth, a stand for justice, and an enduring lesson on the perils of letting lies go unchecked.